Hi everyone and welcome to episode 9 of Stacks of Questions. I am joined tonight by my two team leaders, Morag Shaw and the wonderful Colin Lamont. And today what we're going to do is we're going to give them a challenge. So episode 9's challenge is a little bit off our normal challenges. So what I'm going to ask Morag and Colin to do is to create a fun game concept for revising computer systems content. Because we all know when we get to this time of the year, we're trying to do revision with the kids. We want to do something interesting that keeps them engaged and keeps them revising instead of just working through those same past papers again and again. Because there's obviously really kind of few topics at computer systems, what I decided, guys, is I would have 2 mystery cards, and I've picked 2 topics within computer systems, and I'm going to allow you to pick one of the cards. So who is going to choose first, Morag or Colin? Who wants to go
Ladies
first? Ladies first, Colin. How gentlemanly of you. Okay, so Morag, would you like to flip the pink card or the green card?
Oh, I'll go green.
Okay, so the green card is data representation. So your game has to be based around something to do with data representation. You can choose if it's National 5 or higher, whatever kind of comes to you first. Colin, are you ready to see what you've got?
Let's do it.
You have got computer structure. So again, it could be National 5 or higher, but something the kids could use to revise for computer structure. Is that okay?
Go for it.
All right, so we'll put a 5 or 10 minute timer onto the timer, and we will let you guys get started, and I'll introduce this week's guest. Okay, so this week we are welcoming Ryan. He is a teacher of computing science from the sunny Dunfermline, very close to myself. And you have been teaching for 3 years, Ryan. So hopefully we're going to see a little bit of a different perspective and some fresh new ideas when it comes to revision techniques.
No pressure there, I guess, yeah.
Absolutely. So let's get cracked into our questions. First of all, before I start off, Ryan, at Dunfermline High School, do you teach the database optional unit or the web optional unit?
So we're not on the dark side.
Oh.
We teach the good unit, which is web design. But no,
controversial.
We've opted for web design for really since I've been there, and to my understanding, it's been like that for the past couple of years. I know that it's a bit of a split in the community, but yeah, we're focused on web.
Oh, web, good. That's actually really good, because the person that we were speaking to last week with kind of similar kind of questions to you, she actually does databases. So I think this will give us a little bit. It'll be interesting to see what your answers are and compared to hers. So let's just start off with question number 1. What unit do you find from the units that you teach the hardest for the pupils to revise?
So I think it's probably quite similar across the board, but I think it's definitely the big box questions, anything big box, whether it comes from design or programming or up down to wireframing for web as well. The minute we see a big box, we panic and I think, how do we fill it? I know it's between 3 and 4 marks, and it's that strange one. Where if we have like a smaller box, 1 or 2 marks, that's not really a stress point, and generally we're quite focused. So yeah, I think in terms of programming and the software element, it's definitely the programming language, your own choice, your standard algorithms, pseudocode, design techniques, and then for web, I'd mirror that, to be honest, and that's your wireframing or navigational maps for us.
Yeah. So not necessarily a unit in particular, but more just the bigger questions that are worth bigger marks, would you say?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think in terms of bringing it in, it'll bring it into that sort of implementation side of things on software design. But yeah, to be honest, I think at least for our kids, it's definitely across the big box style questions.
Yeah, good. That's really interesting. And computer kind of science questions, or computing science questions in the National 5 and higher exams, they're really different to the types of questions you would come across in like English or in maths.
Definitely.
How do you prepare the kids for sort of the exam style questions they would find in a computer system, in a computer science exam?
So I think the trick is starting really early. I mean, realistically, as soon as you start hitting those topics, we start filtering that in pretty much from day done. Now, I think that allows it takes the pressure away from it being right, and now it's exam prep, or now it's prelim prep, and it's almost like that shift. It should feel relatively natural. I think we're generally pretty good about using maybe like past paper questions for sort of homework or a little exercise at start, but I think definitely try and filter it into as you're teaching it. So like, for example, when we're first looking at your sort of data representation questions for, looking at simple stuff like binary, it's about getting those exact style questions in early, using the language that they'll see in the exam, the prelim as well. So it shouldn't be as big a surprise. definitely from feedback we had from even parents' information evening, we've had that feedback to us that they're quite chuffed that starts early, rather than it just being it's prelim in 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks time. Here's what an exam looks like, and it kind of enforces that panic element, I feel, as opposed to you know your stuff, you can answer it in class. You wouldn't have got this far if you couldn't. Here's what the expectation is around that. I think it also takes away that kind of why question as well, is ultimately we are working towards that qualification, and we can do lots of fun things in the class, which we'll get a chance to talk about later on. But I think if we can always bring it back to, and this is how you can actually show that knowledge, I think for a lot of kids that actually helps settle the nerves a little bit, and knowing that, that when it's really fresh in our memory, if I was to sit an exam and do that right now, I would be able to get 3 out of 4 on that question, and we can work on getting it across the finish line at the end. But yeah, I think definitely starting early with the exam style questions is the key.
Yeah, and when you say start early, do you mean at the start of S4 when they start those qualifications, or do you mean you bring that down into like the BG when you're using language with those sort of topics, or not so much?
Well, it's funny you say that, because it's kind of the stage we're at now with S3s. We've been quite fortunate to be able to pull a lot earlier into our S3 curriculum. So I think I definitely am. I wouldn't say I was formally talking about I'm not talking about the exam in third year, I'd be honest. I mean, they're just for the front door. I feel it already kind of got it, bang, here's the thing. Exams are a bit of a bait switch, but I think definitely using the language 100%. And it does very much form what we teach and why we teach it. The good thing about bringing it into third year is we've got that scope to maybe spend a little bit longer than we would. If we get some questions, we can delve a little bit deeper. But yeah, I think in terms of third year, using the language that they would see in the exam, but then when we get into fourth year, it's very much a case of this is what you could be asked, and really sort of formalising it. And do you know what? There's time for past papers and lots of scope around it, but not about just saying, and here's a past exam question, and here and here and here, because in today you're only really removing that from revision later on when the kids want to do it themselves. So yeah, I think formalising it in fourth year, but definitely talking about it in third year I think is key.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, and do you have any sort of particular sort of favourite techniques that you use with the pupils when you're revising?
Yeah, so I mean, I think with the subjects, it really you have to be quite responsive to the kids you've got in front of you at the end of the day. But I think for us, like if we take about the example we're working with just now, whereas there's those big box questions are the panickers. That's the one that we dread. We hope doesn't come up, and it's about kind of settling a little bit and saying that look, there's very few things in life that we're confident about, but we know that we are going to be getting some big box questions. There's not going to be an exam that won't have them. So it's about trying to take away the fear factor from it as well, I suppose. I think, plenty of practice in class that they've been doing, but I think what I found particularly useful is taking the big box questions onto the big tables, as I would say. So we're lucky enough to have the sort of group tables in our classrooms where we'll essentially take an exam style question in a programming language of your choice and allow them to work in groups, but like with maybe 1 to 2 minutes max. To very quickly get quite a relatively scrappy answer popped down, even if it's not finished. If it's not finished, even better sometimes. And then rotating into our table that's got a completely different question. Now, by the end of it, it is just absolute chaos incarnate on the tables. But because I've had an opportunity to actually work through different questions relatively quickly, but then also see other people's solutions when they come into it, more often than not, will come there and might agree, might disagree. They might say, "Oh, that's right," but they went a little bit off kilter, and that's okay, because rather than me coming around and going, "You're nearly there, but you're nearly there, but," they're sort of telling each other that without that sort of traditional case of you give it a go for 5 minutes and swap with the person next to you, because while that's still a useful tool, we're talking about making ourselves different for our subjects, and we do that all across the board. That sort of peer marking idea shouldn't be a new concept for us, but I think that idea kind of rotation, I think taking the time puts a little bit of pressure on it, but then also it means that after the 2 minutes, if they are really struggling with that question, they get to leave and they get to move on, and it's not a case of like I'm not going to have any from the table here, because they're working in groups of 3 or 4, so there'll be something. They will manage to get some level of answer down there, even if it is the case of initializing your total 0 and moving on. That's great, happy days. But the person at the end, while they might feel that they've got the harder job, has had the opportunity to kind of see all the different trains of thoughts there, and then we can sort of evaluate as a class. That usually goes down pretty well.
I remember when I used to teach the web unit myself, actually, one of my favourite things I used to do with the kids is I would get them to draw the sitemap or the wireframe, and they would mark each other's. And it's amazing how many kids wouldn't want to give something full marks if it wasn't drawn neatly. 100%. And I deliberately had a pupil who had terrible handwriting and could not draw a straight line to save himself, but he was probably the smartest kid in the class. And I wouldn't tell the kid, it was like anonymous, so I wouldn't tell the kids who it was. And none of the class wanted to give this sitemap or whatever it was at the time, like full marks. But actually it was the only one in the class that was full marks, and it was really interesting just them seeing that and how important it was, the layout and where the nuances in the marking scheme lay. So I think that task you're talking about is really important, and sometimes them seeing someone else's partial answer will trigger something in their own head to be like, actually,
100%.
that's the bit they've missed out. I remember when Mr. Trainer says this, they needed to have this, this, and this, and they've forgotten that last part. So I think that's really powerful.
I think it's all going to help. It kind of helps the relationship in the class as well, because it's not a case of, this is what Simon and Susie think and that's everyone critiquing their answer. It's like, here's what we all thought. Now, yeah, they'll be able to see where their answer was at the top and at the bottom, be able to bring it together. But at the end of the day, we can look at the whole solution as the class. And next thing now, with our iPads, we can sort of go around and take pictures of that, show that on screen really easily. And then the solutions that we're happy with, we can take and sort of rip apart a little bit on the board. Ones that we aren't as happy with, it's really easy to go, we can see where we were going, but it's not a case of here's Sarah or here's John's solution that didn't go as well and but everyone else's did. It's a case of everyone's contributed to that success, which I think does help, especially preparing for that confidence level of exams.
Yeah, and actually for us as a teacher, if they've still fallen short, that we know that there's something that maybe we've not delivered exactly how we wanted to deliver it, or we need to go again. Perfect. So I want to finish off with a question that's kind of quite close to my heart, and I feel like there will be a lot of us are in this situation just now where these boundary kids, so we've got probably quite a lot of kids, I'm sure you're the same as me, who are maybe having a go at National 5, who are right on that kind of edge of National 4, National 5, and we want to just help them tweak over into that C-band 6. Like, do you have any sort of top tips for teachers who are trying to get those sort of boundary kids like just over the edge? Like, what would you do to try and make sure they can secure as many marks as possible?
Yeah, I think it is important. It's that dreaded scenario, isn't it? Because there's something there. It's just about getting that across the line. Yes, I think it's sort of a twofold for me. I think in terms of bringing it back to almost what we were talking before about the big box questions, these are the questions that will stop these kids in their tracks and go, right, I can't do this. Exam paper gets closed again, and then we don't try. It's a case of, it's an open exam paper. Just because it says question 1 doesn't mean you have to do it first. You can move along. We know they kind of follow a bit of a wave and a pattern, but the pupils don't see it like that. So it's a case of not being afraid to skip past questions that are just causing us a bit of stress, because I think more often than not it's about confidence building with the questions that we know we can do. Let's look at environmental questions. We know we can get this. That's our more common sense. That's our quick problem solving answers. We can get our binary questions. We can understand our mantis and our exponent. These are the bits that we can learn. And do you know what? If by the end of it we've got 15-20 minutes, let's give one of those standard algorithms a go. It might be completely out of left field, but we might have something that we can remember there. And I think for us, I've made knowledge organisers the past couple of years, which I think went really well for that exact thing, essentially of taking 1 page per unit, which is just a tiny little task, and it could literally just be, they're quite well animated and things on the page, so they look quite nice and approachable, but it will break down each piece of the course spec with an opportunity to have, complete the standard algorithm here, fill in the blanks. This almost feels a little bit younger than what we're used to doing, but for those people that are struggling, they're then building their notes they ordinarily wouldn't have done. They're not going to sit and make mind maps. They're not going to sit and mindlessly revise, achieve back and forth. This way they can relatively quickly, like a book of kind of handwritten notes, which I think is still really important when we're asking the kids to write the exams, that they don't have to be used to writing the answers. But it does allow them to gather those knowledge into like little excerpts, and it's happened more than once in the exams that they get to finish and they said, I remembered that page. It's not even necessarily about the content, but it's about, I remember there was a page that we wrote about mantissa and exponent, and it's a case of being able to regurgitate that on the day because they've wrote it out and not just answer the question, but actually, completed a mind map or send you drew a picture that links to that. It kind of hits all the different boxes, not what learner you are, but I think it helps those pupils understand what they do know. And then where they can sort of have that Hail Mary, essentially, and just go, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go. I've got 15 minutes. I'm just going to see what sticks. And
so do you have one of them for each of the units then?
Yeah, each of the good units. Yeah, so I've got one for software, web, and systems. They're all there. But so I think I'm more than happy to share them on the STACS drive for anyone that is looking to bring that together. But yeah, we put them on iPad as well now, and that's went quite well because I've actually done them, put the PDF in Shobi, and I just wrote it with their pens or typed answer, and that's seemed quite well. So having the option for both now is nice, where they can digitally organise their notes or handwrite them or stack. And we give them out just at the turn of this year, and parents are made fully aware of that as well. And they're usually pretty on board with that because it's sort of subsidising the homework as well. Yeah. So rather than having the big block bits of homework, the case of we need to have completed, pages 1 through 5 with the computer systems knowledge organizer, and that's something I think parents can look at as well and make quite quick judgments on how we're getting on, as opposed to here's a big stack of notes that I've made, which may or may not be useful. For some people that's great. It's not how I learn personally. I know some people do, but I think it helps us gather those thoughts in a relatively organised way.
Yeah, very nice. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much for saying that you would share it. So let's
Yeah,
go
of course.
over and see how our compadres are getting on with their challenge. Okay, so over to the red team. Colin, would you like to share with us your amazing game?
So I went with a play on words of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and Who Wants to Be an Engineer, because it was like computer
Oh.
systems and it was like computer structure and processors and that type of stuff. So I've done this before where I've given the pupils a template and they need to go and create 15 multiple choice questions, and then they kind of compete against each other, or you could do it with the teacher makes up the questions. The only thing is, if you want more than one person taking part, then that's an awful lot of questions that you have to try and come up with yourself. But AI is always, an option. So just 15 multiple choice questions, and then you have the same sort of lifelines that they do in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, so they can phone a friend 50-50 or ask the audience. Depends on the class in front of you whether you would trust the audience, I suppose, to lead you to the right answer or not. But it's one of those Friday afternoons that at least you're doing some revision and hopefully keeping them entertained as well.
Nice. And are you encouraging the kids to make these kind of like PI questions, and that we're not just throwing completely random multiple choice in there, but we're trying to go for obvious misconceptions sort of thing?
Yeah, I think the better ones will come up with better kind of distractors. You will always get, the risk is that you always get something that's a bit left field, but a bit of a check before you put them up on the board is always required.
Fantastic. Okay, let's head over to the blue team, Morag, and see what your idea is.
I took inspiration from something we did last year when we did the formative assessment for web. So I've built a bridge of lies on N5 statements. So the bridge, now you could expand it and do a full bridge of lies with 32 questions, getting increasingly difficult. I guess you would probably want to do that one in teams though. I've just done a mini one with 6 statements. 3 of them are, only 3 tiles in the bridge are safe. Which ones are they? And the statements are all N5 statements. 3 false, 3 true, and they've got to identify them. I had in, Colin will know this, class sets of bingo cards, 6-bit binary. And the higher classes really, really enjoyed having a little game of 2's complement bingo. It was good fun. So I have got N5 Bridge of Lies, and I've just quickly, it was a PowerPoint. Still got the PowerPoint, can share it if anyone wants it, of higher 2's complement. So
you've got 2 games, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I simply, all I did was quickly grab screenshots of 2 of the frames, because some of them are denary numbers and some of them are binary numbers. So I guess it would depend which way you wanted to play your binary bingo. But yeah, I've quickly grabbed that one as well. Fantastic. So yeah, I've got 2.
Fantastic. I'm willing to share, which is also very good. It goes in your favour, I think, Morag. So over to you, Ryan. You've seen both of our concepts for this week. What do you think? Or where are you leaning towards for our winner?
It's tricky for me. I think they're both gamified, which I think is a good thing for now. I think especially approaching exam time, it's good to keep it fresh. I really liked what Morag was talking about, how easy it was linking with higher as well. I think a lot of these things were one way or the other. I did like the sort of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire element there. That was nice and nice. I think you could get some pretty wackadoo answers coming from certain groups within your class. But I think for me personally, I would lean towards more the option for Morag's choice there with the lies. Because once again, it just I think it encourages that deeper level of thinking, which I think is really nice to see there. I think it kind of challenges that I know what's coming sort of mindset and makes you think about your answer in more depth. So for me, I would award a point there.
Fantastic. So a point to the blue team. Let's head over to see the scores and the doors for episode 9. Okay, so that brings us to the scores on the doors. The red team still in the lead with 5 points, and the blue team very closely behind on 4 points. So it's still all to play for as we head into the next 3 episodes. So that concludes episode 9. First of all, I'd like to say a huge big thank you to Ryan for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure, and we really appreciate you taking the time out. Obviously, for everybody else, the light is at the end of the tunnel. We are just a mere couple of weeks away from the Easter break. Hopefully, you've all got something relaxing planned. STACS will be back after the Easter break for our final 3 episodes of season 1, where we'll look at what happens next. We've done the assignment prep, we've done the exam prep, and we're looking forward into what can we sort of plan and put together in the study leave to prepare ourselves for next year. So hopefully we'll see you all then. Have a fantastic break, and thanks again for joining us. Bye.